Hey everyone, this is Bomb from KTG. So today I didn't bring a game replay, I brought a strategy instead. When we talk about strategy in Metalstorm, that word actually covers a lot of different things, right? First, there's jet composition, the loadout combination. Putting together an efficient jet composition that can win the game is one kind of strategy. An all-attacker composition, or for air superiority, going mostly light fighters for speed. Those kinds of things can be a strategy too. Or when you're attacking, which route do you enter through? Attackers up front. Interceptors or light fighters following behind that kind of formation or attack route can also count as a strategy. But what I'm bringing today is a strategy built around using terrain. I've named it the forward defense line strategy. So let's take some time to think about what this forward defense line strategy actually is, what it means in the game, and what benefits it can bring. Before we get into this strategy, we need to understand how air combat actually works in Metalstorm. Normally, fighter jet combat means using maneuverability and complex tactical moves out in open sky, getting on an enemy's tail, evading, and shooting them down. But in Metalstorm, it's better to think of it as basically an FPS game fought around terrain and cover. Of course, there's also stuff like interceptors keeping up tactical maneuvering in open high-altitude sky. But the basic attack meta in Metalstorm is fighting around terrain and cover. So using terrain to hide and take cover, scouting out blind spots, and grabbing a better attack position among the terrain than the enemy. That process is the single most important part of this game. I've brought up the Stormbreak map here. This side is our respawn, and up here is the enemy respawn, right? So most of the engagements happen around this terrain in the center, with the hill. And there's only one central terrain feature here. Sure, there are various cave routes too, but the important thing is both sides sit back to back around this central terrain, using it to evade, spot enemies, and scout. And that's where the engagement happens, at the center. Because of that, on Stormbreak, there's really no concept of a forward line or rear line. There's just the one center, but let's take a look at a different map. So what about IceBound? In this case, each side, ours and the enemy's, has a hill line, and there's open ground in the middle. So the typical engagement pattern on IceBound has been both sides hiding on their own hill terrain, then coming out into the center to fight. That's been the usual pattern up to now. But if you think about it, this kind of fight in the open center has a lot of luck involved. Fighting in wide open ground means there's no terrain to take cover behind, so you're left completely exposed to enemy fire. Of course, that kind of engagement has its place, and it does demand a lot of focus. If there's a strategy for open field fighting, it's staying grouped up, unloading a concentrated burst of attacks all at once, and then falling back to regroup. That's the kind of gameplay that usually happens. But in my case, I decided to think about it a little differently. What if we think of the hill on our own side as the rear line, and the hill on the enemy's side as the forward line? Then instead of staying back on our own side, we push forward early into that forward line on the enemy's side, and start engaging enemy jets from right there. That way, the fighting at the forward line ends up feeling like the center fight on Stormbreak. What if we thought about it that way? That's the idea I came up with. So what are the advantages of this? First, since you're fighting around terrain instead of in the open, it splits the enemy's attention quite a bit and can really cut down how focused their attacks are. Then there's also things like aggro strategies, and various other benefits you get from fighting around a hill instead of open ground. All right, let's look at one more map together. Crimson Canyon works the same way. You can push up from here, but if you think of the hill by the central supply route as the rear line, then this tall hill rising above the central canyon can be seen as the forward line, right? Normally what we see is enemy jets coming into the central canyon and fighting there. But if you push the front line up a bit further and meet the enemy at the forward line instead, there's a real advantage here too. From the perspective of an enemy jet coming down from above, Passing through this forward line is usually treated as just a prep stage before the real engagement. They're trying to get into the central canyon and drag the fight toward the supply route. But if you push the front up to the forward line and start the fight there instead, you can deny the enemy the timing they need to prepare their attack, and you get the benefit of fighting with a hill on your side. It splits up the enemy's firepower and weakens how focused their attacks are. So what I've explained so far is the basic concept of the forward line and rear line. Let's check it out with some actual match footage. So the first clip is a team deathmatch match on IceBound. 5 of us from KTG made up our team, and the other side had 4 from the Ace squad mixed with 1 player from another squad. Their team had 4 attackers plus a stealth F-22 Raptor. And I think using this forward line play is especially advantageous against a team like this that's mostly attackers. Why? Just think about it. If 4 or 5 attackers come pouring out into the center on IceBound all at once, imagine having to meet that head-on. How much pressure would that put on you? If that same situation happened on Stormbreak, you'd be fighting with a wall for cover at the center, so it'd be a lot easier to play out. It's the same on IceBound. Instead of hiding on our own side and waiting for the enemy to come over to us, you push forward first and set up on the forward line the hill on the enemy's own side. Right now, both our main force and the enemy's main force are back behind. All right, the enemy just spotted my position. The Su-34 up ahead saw me and turned to change direction. I'm setting up around this forward line hill to prepare for the engagement. You can see the Su-34 already has aggro on me, and so does the Raptor up front. What I'm doing is dragging the engagement with the enemy away from an open fight in the center and into a terrain-based fight at the forward line instead. By tying up the attention of 2 or 3 enemy jets, I'm also aiming to split how focused their attacks are on our main force. Our main force needs to move properly to match this timing. But since we're not on Discord or communicating with the team in real time, the coordination might be a little off. But just watch this. When you're circling around a hill fighting 2 or 3 enemies at once, even in a 1 versus many situation, you actually have a lot of room to maneuver. So while circling, I got a kill on good game too. While heading back to resupply health, I didn't notice an enemy coming in and got shot down in a head-on. So that's the situation there. But think about it again. Using this forward line lets you split the enemy's attention, which cuts down how focused their attacks are. And by keep turning and fighting around this terrain, if the conditions line up, you can even set up a situation to shoot down 1 or 2 more enemy jets. What you'll see in this first clip is that when using the forward line fast, agile light fighters also benefit from clearing an attack path in advance. In a normal formation, light fighters stay behind the attackers. But if you're someone who reads the minimap well, you can go in first, scouting enemy positions, drawing some aggro, and by the time our main force pushes in, weakening how focused the enemy's attacks are on them. So in that sense too, playing the forward line has real value. That was a look at what forward line play looks like, so let's check out another clip. So the second clip is also from IceBound, and this time it's a match against the Red Muffler squad. This is around the middle of the fight. Right after the first engagement, things have quieted down a bit. Our jets are all grouped up on our own side right now, and we can't see where the enemy jets are. So I push forward again first, up to the forward line, to scout for enemy jets. And this time I even peek a little past into their territory. But I don't see any of them. There's just 1 Su-25 out here, and you can see the rest of the enemy jets are over on this side. This kind of situation is just lucky. You can go take care of an isolated enemy jet like this while playing the role of a scouting vanguard. So it's the concept of scouting the enemy's side in advance from the forward line. This can also help you poke into an open gap in their formation. All right, the third clip is a match on Crimson Canyon. The other side has 4 from the Ace squad plus Louis Paulson, so 4 attackers total. There's 1 JA-37 in there. And on our side, we only have 1 attacker, so it's a pretty unfavorable matchup for taking on a pack of attackers head-on. So in this situation, I'm going to try using some forward line play. I'm flying the F-100. The F-100 has really good maneuverability too, so it's great for this kind of vanguard play using the forward line. Now, one thing to watch out for with this kind of play, if the other team has something like an F-16, A jet with really good maneuverability, forward line play can get risky. Because when you're circling and fighting around terrain like that, you really need a maneuverability advantage to benefit from it. If there's a jet with better maneuverability than mine, I could actually end up getting outplayed while fighting around that same terrain. So that's something to keep in mind too. All right, I'm entering the forward line and climbing up a bit toward the top of the hill, see? Looking down from a slightly higher position is also an advantage in a fight. Just now, the enemy spotted my position right away, so I can't just push in, I'm reading the situation. Has the enemy figured out my position? That's important information too when deciding how to move next. Same as before, I keep turning around this forward line hill, trying to keep grabbing a favorable position in the fight against the enemy. So while fighting around the hill like this, the enemy's attack focus got split. And I managed to shoot down Lewis Paulson after he got separated, though of course I got shot down too. The key point here is don't fight in the open, fight around terrain. If you play this way, even when several enemy attackers come in, you can really split up their firepower. I think that's the biggest advantage. So in this case too, I'm pushing forward to the forward line again in the same way. Our teammates are staying grouped up at the center, looking for their chance to attack, while I'm further up front playing more aggressively, doing this aggro and scouting type of play. All right, I shot down one of the attackers pushing over into our territory. Now, of course, just because I'm playing the forward line doesn't mean that alone decides everything. In this match, there's also the movement of teammates backing that up. Since a lot of different factors combine to produce the result, does playing the forward line make everything favorable? No, it's not like that. There are advantages you can gain through this kind of play, but the movement of teammates who can back it up matters just as much. But teammates aren't really used to the strategic use of forward line play yet. So I'm hoping this video can be a chance for us to start thinking about this kind of strategy. How can our jets use strategic movement to pull the fight into a more favorable shape? Let's think about that together. That's the spirit behind putting this video out. If you look at how the match is playing out, even though we've pulled the front forward to the forward line, we're not at any disadvantage against their 4 attackers. In fact, I think it's actually more favorable than letting the enemy push all the way to the central supply route. The central canyon before the fight starts. If the enemy gets to safely cross over to the central supply route and settles into a stable formation before starting the fight, we end up having to play from a pretty defensive position. So pushing more aggressively and building the front line at the forward line like this can actually turn out to be the more favorable strategy. And if we get pushed back while attacking like that, we can just retreat to the rear line, reform our formation, and keep up the attack with our usual play style. And here on Crimson Canyon for this forward line, our starting point is actually favorable. For the enemy, even just crossing over this forward line carries some pressure, because there isn't much cover behind this forward line. So is it really an advantage to just let them cross this safely? That's the kind of thing worth thinking about. On top of that, even if you keep showing your position to the enemy at this forward line, it makes them nervous, so they can't just carelessly push across either. And that keeps them from focusing their attack on our main formation, because they keep getting their attention pulled toward that aggro player lurking around up front at the forward line. I think that can also create a situation where you can turn a more unfavorable jet composition or matchup into something more favorable. All right, in this case here, things are playing out with a more typical style, see? So shall we check out the next clip? All right, this one's also from Crimson Canyon. This time it's a 5-attacker squad. There are 5 from the Ace squad here, and there are even 2 top-tier players in there. So against this all-attacker squad, our team also has 4 attackers and 1 stealth jet. This ace squad is a team of attacker specialists. They're genuinely great at flying attackers. Their aim is really accurate too. So when it comes to figuring out whether a strategy actually works against an attacker squad, the way to find out is to check whether it works against this exact ace attacker squad. They're that skilled a squad, so if something works against this team, you can call it a proven strategy. That's another way to look at it. All right, this time I flew the Su-25. The Su-25's turning isn't bad, but it's kind of slow, so you might wonder if it's really suited to forward line play. But this is also partly about testing out the strategy a bit as something different from the usual way we fight at the center. So let's see what kind of result comes out of flying the Su-25 and trying that forward line play. Let's take a look. All right, crossing over the center line. Since our stealth jet is scouting for us, we've got a decent read on the enemy jets' positions. All right, the Jaguar just spotted my position. So now it's turned and it's coming at me. So since I'm exposed to the enemy now too, I can't just push in blindly. I need to turn a bit more defensively here and check things like the attack angle. In this case, our teammates are also crossing over toward the forward line area and playing along with it. So we've pulled our attacking and engagement formation forward, and we're fighting a bit further up front now. When it plays out like this, you can just play it with the same feel as fighting on Stormbreak. So as I keep circling like this, just like I mentioned earlier, their attack focus drops and they end up scattering one by one. So a lot of opportunities for picking them off one at a time keep coming up. And GG here, a really skilled player. So while chasing GG's Su-25, I did end up getting caught by an enemy jet from behind. Anyway, if you look at it, using this kind of strategy definitely isn't always good. But this way, we disrupted the enemy jet's movement, dropped their focus, and ended up in a position where we took control of the attack. In this case, it wasn't just me pushing in alone. Our teammates pushed up together with me and started the fight from there too. So, we ended up starting the engagement with the enemy from a slightly more favorable position. That's the kind of thing you can take away from this. All right, now we're back to a more traditional fight at the center. In a case like this, there's no need to force a push all the way to the forward line. You can just flow naturally with it, setting our position based on where the enemy jets are, and keep playing from there. So after shooting down GG's Su-25, the rest of the play from here on just flows back into a typical pattern. So after that, depending on the situation, once the fighting settles down, we push our formation forward again and keep playing. And if things turn unfavorable, we fall back down to the rear line, staying flexible and flowing with it as we push and pull our formation depending on the situation. What matters is constantly grabbing a position that's favorable for us and one the enemy doesn't expect. Always aiming to pick the most advantageous attack position. That's the whole point of choosing where to fight. So there's no single correct answer. Having a variety of strategies you can choose from depending on the situation widens your options. And it also puts more pressure on the enemy with situations they can't predict. All right, let's move on to another clip. So the last clip I've brought is a 3-on-3 match on Crimson Canyon. The other team has 2 from the A squad, plus 1 player flying a MiG-19, going 3-on-3 against our KTG squad mates. And I flew the Su-34 that day. The other side has 1 A6, 1 MiG-19, and 1 Su-25, and our team has a Su-25, a Su-34, and 1 Mirage F1. That's the composition. As for the Su-34, its maneuverability is pretty good. It's fairly fast, but its turning power isn't all that great. So trying to fight a turning battle around terrain in the Su-34 might not actually be the best choice, since the enemy has a MiG-19. But when I filmed this, I was still in the middle of testing out various strategies. Right now, the MiG-19 spotted my position, so it's been circling around me ever since. Since I set up and started the engagement at the forward line, while we keep fighting around this terrain, the enemy is now circling around and heading back. It's not just them heading straight toward our side, they're going back and forth and getting scattered by it all, see? Just so you know, enemy jets 4 and 5 on the minimap are bots, so you should factor that in a bit differently. I think that's about enough of this clip for now. So I'm not sure how it looked to you all. Like I said, I'm not telling you this is right or wrong as some kind of definitive strategic answer. It's more that when you're thinking through various tactical movements using terrain, this is something well worth trying too. That's one point. The second point is, when doing this kind of play, following up on the teammate up front who's leading the charge at the forward line, drawing aggro, and keeping this play going, how our main force should respond to that is something we need to think through together. So that's the spirit in which I made this video. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope this sparks a lot of discussion afterward too. Thanks for watching. This has been Bomb from KTG.